Welcome to Estate Planning Beyond the Binder.
Welcome to Estate Planning Beyond the Binder, where we break down what you really need to know to protect the people you love and the life you've built, and how the estate planning firm you hire makes sure your estate plan is effective. I'm your host, Zofia Morales, and our expert today is Brian Chu, estate planning attorney, dad, and founder of OC Wills and Trust Attorney. Whether you're a married couple with kids, a homeowner, a business owner, or just starting to think about your future, this show is here to make the estate planning process simple, doable, and built around what matters most to you. Today's episode is What's Next After Setting Up Your Binder? Welcome, Brian. I'm happy to have you here with me today.
Thank you again, Zofia, for having me on.
So tell us, Brian, once we have this binder and we've signed on the bottom line, are we done, or is there something else we need to be taking on?
And when I talk about the binder, that's what we refer to as the estate plan. You know, it's a series of documents that people have that they've signed, and now we put it in a nice binder and we give it to our clients. And you know, that's, you know, for most estate planning, that's what, you know, most people are expecting. And as I've talked in prior episodes, that's not the end of the process. Okay. Like I said, estate planning is a process, not a product. And the product and the binder, that is a product, but it's not the end, because there are things that need to be done once we hand you the binder. Okay.
What's on our to-do list when we get that binder?
And we give our clients a list. You know, first, some of them we're going to take care of, some of they're going to take care of. You know, the primary, there's two aspects to it. There's what's called funding the trust, and then B, the logistics. Okay. The funding of the trust is making sure the trust is the owner or beneficiary of our assets. Usually for our clients, for real estate example, we'll take care of the real estate. We'll have them, they'll have signed a deed that will then record for them with the local county recorder. That's what formally puts the house in the trust. And that's the critical aspect for avoiding one of the purposes of doing this, which is avoiding probate. All right.
So that's the house. The next big thing people have is cars. What do we do on those?
Usually cars and jewelry and artwork, that's all personal property. That will be in the trust. So we'll have, as part of our process, we'll have you sign a statement stating all those assets in the trust. You don't have to worry about those too much. We do, though, as part of our process, if you care who gets any of those personal items, we do give our clients a blank form that they can fill out at their leisure to indicate who gets what on the personal items. And that sometimes is important, because it's one thing, you know, something even like a car. We're not too worried about that because they'll probably just sell the car and split the proceeds. But there's a lot of items that people may have, mostly like wedding jewelry, heirlooms, where there's a sentimental value beyond the intrinsic value of the asset. And now people might get upset based on who chooses who gets what. Okay. And depending on who's doing that, we don't want anybody upset at the living. Okay. We want the parents typically to make those choices so that worst case, they're mad at them. Okay?
Yeah, exactly.
and so there's nobody fighting about stuff, you know, because most stuff nobody cares, but there are a lot of one-of-kind items, family heirlooms, those type of things. We want people to make choices on. So that's the personal property. And then finally, we have financial accounts. We need to fund the financial accounts by making the trust the owner or the beneficiary at the institutional level, at the bank, at the life insurance company, at the 401k company, the investment company. We need to fill out paperwork with them, my clients do, that says the trust is either the owner or beneficiary of that asset. And I'll give my clients, you know, instructions how to do either, but it's going to be their job to get that done. Okay.
Right. And it's probably more than just a phone call. It's what do I need to do? And then making sure the papers are complete.
Yeah. The paperwork itself is not that complicated. It just has to be done. So I'll give instructions how to do it. And then I do have a team that will support our clients if they have questions, if they have needs, so they can get a hold of us quickly. And you know, so that we can get those forms filled out and you can turn them in. And, you know, that's the key. We find, you know, we try to follow up with our clients using the first 30, 60 days after we finish, you know, after we hand them the binder. We'll try to follow up with them, because we find if our clients don't get this work done that they need to get done, the funding of the trust within the first 30 to 60 days, they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
And so now those assets, for any number of reasons, if you don't do it, the plan, that planning will now be less effective.
Yeah, exactly. So what are some of the main mistakes you see families make after the plan has been created? I
mean, it's number one is not funding the trust. Okay. You know, they have accounts and they might even name beneficiaries, like their kids might be the beneficiaries on those accounts. But there's two issues with that, or actually three. A, the kids are minors, in which case if the kids are minors, something happens to you, you name as a beneficiary, they'll get the money, but it will go to probate because they have to decide
Mm.
who's in charge of the money since the kids can't be in charge.
Right.
Two, the kids might be adults. They might be 18 or 19 or 20. And even though I have a trust, because you've named them individually as a beneficiary, that money will go to them directly, which may not have been my intent. Like in my trust,
Right.
my kids don't get control of assets until like 25. Okay. That's one of
Yeah.
the reasons why I do a trust, because I want to control when the money goes to my kids, when they get control of it. But if I name my kids as beneficiaries and they're 18, they'll get control of that money immediately. And that may
And
not
that buys a lot of beer.
buy who knows what it buys.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's most 18-year-olds are just not equipped to spend. I mean, most you think about most college kids, they don't make the wisest decisions.
Yeah,
So
well,
that's why
they don't have the life experience to make the good life decisions quite yet.
exactly. And so and then lastly, and we'll talk about this in a future episode, we do have some ways you can protect assets for your kids from their creditors, judgment, divorce, etc. And again, if you name the children instead of naming what we call a dynasty trust as the beneficiary, or your trust in this case as the beneficiary, that money will not have the option to be protected.
Mm.
So that's why the funding of the trust is number one. Well, actually, that's probably number two. Number one is logistics. We talked about this previous episode. You got to tell the people, whoever's going to be in charge, where they can find the money. Because you can fund the trust all you want, but if you don't tell anybody about the money, that could be potentially a bigger headache, because the banks don't raise their hand and say, we've got money. They're waiting for somebody to come to them to get it. And if your whoever's in charge doesn't know to go get it, it's a problem. And depending on, especially nowadays, cryptocurrency and purely online accounts
my
and banks
Lord,
and stuff
yeah.
like that, people may never find those things if you don't tell them about it. So actually, that's, like I said, probably the number one thing. Number two is logistics. I mean, number two is the funding. And then number three is, what are your obligations? The bills, credit cards, debts, your Netflix subscription, your pie of the month club, whatever it might be. You want to make sure somebody knows how to deal with what to deal with. And then, we have the whole class of, business owners. You have a business like myself. I own a business. I have a law firm. If I'm not here, what happens? I got to tell my wife's got to know. Whoever my backup trustees got to know. And most of them have never stepped foot in this business, so they have no idea who would they even talk to.
Yeah, and probably whatever assistant or manager you have in the business needs to know who's supposed to be coming to talk to them.
Correct. Yeah, you need to have a conversation with them. Well, if I'm not here, especially in a business like mine, where my business technically legally can't run without me because I'm the owner as the attorney. Other business might be able to keep operational, like a retail store or something like that that can continue to operate. But if something happened, somebody needs to be talking to somebody.
Yeah.
At that point to figure out what are the options.
Absolutely. This can be a really tender topic to bring up with people. Some people don't really like to talk about, well, what if you're not here, or what if I'm not here? How do you start those conversations with your spouse, with family members, without kind of overwhelming them?
I mean, I think you've got to talk about what happens if you don't do it. It's, what's the worst possible, not necessarily the worst possible, what is the potential outcome if you don't do this planning? All right. Mm-hmm. We have, culturally, there's a number of cultures where you might be superstitious, where you talk about death, that it's going to happen. And that's what does prevent a lot of people from doing the planning. And I always tell the people, you've got to appeal to them. This is what it's going to look like if you don't do something.
Yeah.
And, we never know, and all the stuff has to be done in advance. The problem is we don't know when in advance is. And that's why we do the planning. I always tell people, not having an estate plan is like driving without car insurance. As long as you come home that day, it's fine. You didn't need it. Okay. However, in this case, though, it didn't cost you less money. So obviously you didn't have insurance that day. Well, you didn't have to pay for it. In this case, when you have an estate plan, it's not getting cheaper by not having it.
True.
And so that's why, we encourage a plan, to get it done sooner than later, because it's not saving you money. And you just can create every day. You're just risking things without having the plan.
Yeah, I have a friend who put it off for a long time, and then his employer was going to send him to Rwanda.
Oh, wow.
or someplace where they have like this abundance of landmines. And he's like, you know what? Maybe I need to get me some life insurance like right now. and that's kind of started his planning ball for him. But it took like that immediacy of risk for him to move out of inaction.
And, that happens, a lot of times, people come to me, they want to do their estate plan because they're going to go traveling, especially right now. They're getting ready. This is one of our busier times because they're going on trips in the summer. And I always tell people, that's great. I'm glad you're here. I don't care what motivated you to get here. But the reality is, you driving here today was 100 times more dangerous than you getting on that plane. unless it is maybe to Rwanda or something like that.
Yeah.
For most of us, getting on that plane is relatively safe compared to driving. Driving for us is the single most dangerous thing we do on any number of levels. From somebody passed away, somebody injured, from a liability standpoint. My concern is always the car. Who's in the car and what could happen? And that's the scenario I always use. And that's the most likely scenario where something, people, you said, the number of people that actually pass away on a plane, is, despite what's happened recently, is double digits, triple digits, maybe over the last 20 years since 9/11. The number of people that die here in Orange County on the roads every day, it's definitely countable.
Yeah.
It happens, we see the accidents every day, and statistically it's not close.
Yeah. And lives are changed and lost with unfortunate regularity.
In an instant. And it might not even be your fault. You go through the light, it's green on your side, they blow through the red, and well, that's all it takes.
Yeah. Or you might not even be in the car, and they just, somebody's up on the sidewalk and there you go. So what kind of ongoing support does your firm provide after the binder is complete, after they've got all those documents?
Well, one thing that's key for us is we provide what I always call, timely support. Okay. When somebody calls us, if not get an immediate response, they're always going to get a response from us within one business day. But that's because I got enough people. Okay. Because anybody can say, oh, we'll get back to you, as soon as we can. The problem is as soon as you can is based on how many hours in the day they have to get back to people. And so I've always told people, if you're not working with an estate planning firm that's growing the size of their firm as they go along, they cannot possibly keeping up with their existing client base. Estate planning attorneys, our client base keeps getting bigger and bigger every day. We're gaining clients faster than we're losing them.
Yeah.
Which means we just have, every day we have there's just more and more people that might have a need. They're all not going to have a need at once, that might have a need to update something, or something's happened, or just have a question, about what to do. And if they're not getting a timely response to their question, let alone have work be done, now their plan's potentially less effective. And that's just really important for us, is we have the ability and bandwidth because of the size of our firm. We're one of the bigger estate planning firms in Orange County. Just for myself, I have 4 other attorneys and 8 staff. Those numbers, what allows us to stay in touch with our clients, check in with our clients 30 to 60 days after they finish, 6 months after they finish, every 3 years perhaps, an email every now and then, just to remind them, hey, if something's changed, maybe you need to talk to us. Okay, that's the best we can do, is, because we're not going to know something's changed for our clients. The best we can do is stay in touch. And then when our clients do have a question, they do have a need, is be responsive. Because that's where we end up getting clients a lot from other attorneys is, the nature of our business is that estate planning attorneys have to focus on new clients. Right. If you have to choose between new and existing clients, the new clients represent 80-90% of our revenue. And so if somebody calls us as a new client, if I have to choose between new and existing, I'm going to call the new person every time, because they'll walk away if I don't respond to them. And then they represent most of my revenue. So I got to respond to them. And so if I have to choose, I'm going to get to the people that are my existing clients when I get to them. But, inevitably what happens is, it can even if they do get an appointment, it's, we'll get you in a couple months, or they're not being responded to at all. And that's when they call us, and that's where we're able to take care of clients. But again, that's because I have dedicated teams in my firm to deal with new clients in the process, and then clients who have finished. I have separate teams to deal with them, so that there's always a separate point of contact. My existing clients are not competing with the new clients for our attention.
Beautiful.
And that's what you should be expecting from your estate planning firm. That's the big issue with when people are looking to hire. They're focused. That's why I say beyond the binder. They're focused on getting the binder, and don't realize that the support that comes with it, how important, and not even the support, it's the ability to support you, how important that is.
Yeah, exactly. To keep that plan up to date so it's truly effective when the moment arrives. So how does keeping your plan up to date actually save your family time and money later on?
Well, number one, on time and money, obviously the primary reason people are coming to us is to avoid probate. Okay. Right. Probate here, especially in California, is very expensive and time consuming. Okay. So the number one goal is to avoid that. And the problem is that the trust, like I explained earlier, it by itself does not avoid probate. It's a mechanism by which we avoid probate. Okay.
Right. But it has to be maintained.
It needs to be maintained. And it's not even the trust document itself. Okay. It's the asset, that asset. And again, once you do it, you've done it for the most part. Okay. If you make the trust the owner or beneficiary of that asset, that bank account, unless you change it, it's done. Okay. You don't have to worry about it. But if you acquire new assets, open new bank accounts, you need to update those accounts to reflect the trust. Okay. I give my clients instructions on how to do it with or without us, but they have to do it. And if they don't do it, then if something happens to them, things can go to probate. or things might not even go the place they want it to go, depending on the situation. Example: if you have an asset that you name a beneficiary that's not the same beneficiaries in your trust, well, that money's going to that beneficiary. It doesn't matter what your will of trust is at that point. That person get the money. Now, maybe that's intentional, and that may where it will be the case. But if that wasn't the intention, then you now have an asset that will have nothing to do with your trust, and the money may not go where you want it to go. Or it won't go the way you want it to go in terms of avoiding the time and cost of probate, because the average probate right now in Orange County is not only expensive, but takes 1 to 2 years. Uncontested. Nobody fighting about anything.
Wow. That's the easy ones.
Yeah, the easy ones, because it's just a procedural. Yeah. The courts here are slow. They take forever to get hearings scheduled. And then if you miss a hearing date, you miss, some document's not signed correctly, that's going to set you back 6 to 8 weeks. Wow. Every time it happens. And so it happens all the time. That's why my job is to keep the probate attorneys unemployed.
There you go. I like that. That's a great mission.
Other parts of the country, the estate planning attorneys actually work to get the probate attorneys employed. They want the probate fees. That's not here in Orange County, but or California in general. Other parts of the country, that's actually they do probate.
Thanks for sharing this wisdom with us today, Brian.
Thank you, Zofia.
Thanks for tuning in to Estate Planning Beyond the Binder. If today's episode sparked questions, or if you're ready to create a plan that actually works when your family needs it most, visit ocwillsandtrust.com to learn more or to schedule a consultation. Don't wait for the crisis. Let's plan with purpose together. And make sure to like, subscribe, and review. It helps other people find this content as well.
Thank you, Zofia. Have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.